Old season is over. It's time for something new. It's time for change. It's time for new battles. It's time for new champions. It's time for Season 3. Welcome to HSR Motorsport.
Parked up outside in the old school. The new me back in the new. The dog always find his way back home and it's
Hello and welcome to the HSR Motorsport GT3 Season 3 Championship. Today, you join us for round 3 here at Monza. It's known as the Temple of Speed and is one of the most well-known racing tracks in all of racing history. Almost every ACC driver knows it because it's the most popular track on the public lobbies. So not necessarily the most famous track due to popularity for us sim racers, but definitely in the real world this is one of the tracks that everyone aspires to race on one day. It hosts some of the biggest races in the world, like GT3 races, like endurance races, and of course F1, and that is ultimately what many of our drivers dream of one day, is to race here in some sort of race series, either F1 or GT3 or whatever. You join us now for round 3 of 8. It's a new season kind of setup. We've got a couple new formats for the races, and we do of course have some just really great racing lined up, a couple nice tracks lined up, so we're really looking forward to the rest of the season. Of course, the new 2 rounds being added to the season are 2 30-minute sprints instead of just the usual 1 hour of racing, and we saw a little bit of that last week at Kailami. Quite an interesting race, and of course full points were awarded for each little round, each little race of that round, and as a result some drivers have just absolutely shot up the leaderboard while others have plummeted. Now I do beg your pardon, as it was very much last minute come into the streaming studio and just quickly set up, so I am going to be off for maybe 30 seconds just while I sort out this issue, and we'll be back live as soon as we can. I'm not going off live, just need to get a different screen going. And there we go, issues sorted. So that should be the least of our worries now. However, What is not the least of our worries is that it is getting dark quickly. It is the start of an Italian evening, the start of a European evening. It's currently 8:30 in Italy at the moment, in the virtual world, 8:31 p.m. and the track is at 14 degrees Celsius. Absolutely not the right weather, absolutely not the right temperature for our drivers today. They'll be feeling that temperature in the tyres, and of course they'll have to up the pressures, and sometimes that's just not enough. They have to go to exceedingly great lengths, maybe close the brake ducts a little more to conserve the heat. But anyway, we go on board now with Hosko, one of our Pro-Am drivers, to start off this race weekend session. Hosko's been the topic of a couple battles this season, particularly at Valencia for round one. A very entertaining little battle between him, Rucraft, Manship and some of the other AM drivers, and it definitely provided some good entertainment for all of us watching at home. Now up at the top is Jackson in another Ferrari, car 323, and he set a 47.7, which is a very decent lap time here at Monza. And you can see there is a distinct gap between the top three and then the rest of the grid. Oh, sorry, the top two, I would say. Warburton is about 3/10 off of Hosko, and then it's Turner 0.1, and then a whole second separating Turner in P4 and Elford in P5. Now, for those of you who are joining us for the first time tonight, the race has a couple notes. First of all, let's talk about the race format. 1 hour of practice, of which 13 minutes has already elapsed, followed by 20 minutes of split quali, and then 1 hour of racing, as we see an Aston Martin laying across the track just before Parabolica. No, apologies, that's not Parabolica. I still need to get my bearings on this track, I apologise. That was just before Curva de Lesmo, the first one, turn 6. But, sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. The race is 1 hour long, and it has one mandatory pit stop, and this pit stop is for fuel only. Tyres were a requirement last season, but they changed it up this season, so now tyres are optional. So when it comes to strategy, it's a little more open than last season, and as it is, last season's was already very liberal. No pit window. Not last season, not this season. We have no pit window at all in the GT3 season. Well, any GT3 season, I think, for the HSR Motorsport side of things. So yeah, the only thing that could really open up and just let the drivers free in terms of the pit requirements really is get rid of the mandatory pit stop. That's obviously the big one. The other one might be no fixed refueling times. So this means that no matter how much fuel you put in the car, you always stop the same amount of time. So if someone put in 3 litres, they're going to be stopping 25 seconds. If someone put in 120, they're still going to be stopping 25 seconds. So it means that the fuel is not, the amount of fuel you put in is not necessarily proportional to the amount of time you spend in the pit. Now that does mean that having the fixed refueling time really evens out the playing field. It just brings the drivers a little closer. We've got a nice little trio of cars coming through the second sector of the track, apologies. It's now Warburton in P3 on the leaderboard overall, but P1 in his class. If you're wondering about classes, we have 3 of them: Pro, Pro-Am and Am. Pro is denoted by the little white background on the back, or as the background of the car number on the leaderboard on your left, while the grey background denotes Pro-Am, and Am is the red background. As you can see, Warburton is red, therefore he's an Am driver. And yes, he is P3 overall on the overall leaderboard, but in terms of his relationship to the other AM drivers, he is currently P1 in his class, and by quite a significant distance. He's about a second ahead of Worth in terms of the overall timings, and it's another 2.5 seconds to Malott in the McLaren, further back down the grid in P10 overall. Now at the moment we have 20 drivers joining us this evening so far. We still have 45 minutes left in practice, so there is plenty of time for them to join. Our first race of the season saw 41 drivers join us, and that's definitely been one of the fullest lobbies we've seen so far. As Warburton comes into the pits, his white Aston Martin. Now, as I was saying, the first race of the season saw 41 drivers compete out of 50 potential. We have 50 drivers signed up to the championship, and unfortunately we've not managed to have a full 50 car race. But of course, that's life. These drivers have some stuff on that might prevent them from attending every race, and it just so happens that the races have fallen such that we've not had a full lobby yet. And it was a similar story with last season, to be fair. We had, I can't remember, maybe 42 drivers as a max. So yeah, it's rare that we actually get a really full lobby and close to 50 drivers. So, you know, hopefully we can change that this season or next season. We'll have to see. Currently following Jordan, who's just jumped up the leaderboard and dropped down to P4 as Mishka sets his time in the BMW. This is Jordan now, P3, 0.8 seconds off of Jackson, our current practice leader. Now, unfortunately, we do not have any interviews scheduled for this evening, but that does mean we can get round to one of my favourite pastimes when I'm doing this, really, is looking at liveries. Now, of course, it is really dark, so we can't actually see much, but I might be able to fix that a little bit later. So let's go from top to bottom, shall we, in terms of position and standings. Jackson, oh, we can't see him. Yeah, this might be a little tricky with the evening setting on. We've already elapsed 20 minutes since we've started going live. I mean, 20 minutes virtually, not in real life. We've only been going for like, oh, to be fair, we have been going around 15 to 20 minutes. It's yeah, time flies when you're having fun, am I right? Cool. And the leaderboard continues to fill up with closer times. Hosco taking a 47.7 now, away from Jackson by 15 hundredths. Then he's closely followed by Mishka, 0.145 seconds. Mishka coming out of the pits right now, and Navanios, 0.185 seconds off of Hosco. Now, this is quite interesting because it is 2 Pro-Ams ahead of 2 Pro drivers. However, we have seen how quickly things can change during both practice, qualifying and the race. So this should provide some good entertainment to see how the lap times fall. Dutton, 0.2 seconds, so the only big gap is between 5th and 6th Dutton and Jordan, the Lexus and the Ford. 0.6 seconds, 0.633 seconds to be precise, between car A12 and 22, and then from there on it's a little bigger. And as you can see, we're starting to fill up on the lobby now. We've just had a new driver join us. We have 16 drivers who have set a time so far. In terms of contact, we do have some between car 12 and 57. This is going to be between Elford and Christoph, a Porsche and I believe a Ferrari. So let's see if we can have a quick look at that. coming down straight. Ferrari looks down the inside. And to be fair, that was alright. Might just have been a little incident from ACC, thinking there's an incident where it isn't, unless it was so early I was just too slow to catch it. Which of course is quite a possibility when you've got about 3 screens to look at and manage a couple streams, etc, etc. And we already have a couple guys in the live chat. Thank you for joining us this evening. 5 concurrent viewers. Leave Us Racing, welcome. John Hewley saying nice. And yes, Leave Us, I am ready for turn. Well, no, actually I'm not. Now I think about it. The gut response was yes, I can't wait to see this, but also it's gonna be nuts. That's probably the reason why we're kind of, yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be crazy. And the times continue to plummet as Dutton closes the gap to Jackson, 0.123 seconds now. And Jordan closing the gap to Lavagnos. He's now only 0.3 seconds off of Lavagnos' time. And of course, Lavagnos last race was still in the Pro-Am class, but after 2 consecutive podiums at Kailami, he was moved up to the Pro class, and he has not done too bad transitioning to the new group of racers. And there's a BMW, I believe that's Worth, just ahead of Alfred now. Both the timing and the actual lap, unless that's Mishka just ahead. Mishka car 3 is a whole lot further on in the track than Alfred. So no, it wasn't. So yeah, it was Worth, but not Mishka. Oh my goodness. Right, now we need to start thinking about how this race is going to go. Lavagnos taking P1 now, 147.470. He's beaten Hosko's time by 0.1 seconds, and accordingly everyone's gap increases from the leader. 23 drivers in the lobby now. We've got mostly AM drivers, and then I'd probably say in terms of most to least, it's going to be AMs to pros. So kind of pro-AMs stuck in the middle. We've got 2, 4, 6, 8 drivers joining us in the pro-AMs. Oh, and also 8 drivers for the AMs, to be fair. And 7 drivers for the pros. Sorry, it just looks a certain way on the leaderboard. Me just being an idiot, maybe. Cool. Now let's see if we can get some onboards going, maybe talk through the track a little. Now Mishka is just coming into turn 1, Prima Variante, turns 1 and 2, the little chicane. And that is not exactly how we usually take it, but Jackson should provide a pretty good hot lap for us, a pretty good tour of the track. So coming down the main straight now, be hitting around 320 kilometers an hour at the end of the straight, maybe 350. I'm not 100% sure what the speed is precisely. Coming into Prima Variante, once again, turn 1, then turn 2. The interesting high braking zone into the first chicane of the track, then through the long right-hander now to Curva Yasono, turn 3. You can either cut as much of the track as possible and just keep the distance to a minimum, or you might want to take that a little wider and then get just less tyre wear. Now into the second chicane of the track, Seconda Variante, turns 4 and 5 into the first Curva di Lesmo, turn 6, then turn 7. Very similar corners. You can see there's a bit of rubble already on the side of the track. He's then coming now through Curva del Seraglio, the kink, to the left for another big braking zone into Ascari, Variante, Ascari 8, 9 and 10. We can cut the curbs fairly heavily. And if you get that corner right, you've got good speed out onto another straight before you hit Curva Parabolica, turn 11 as the final corner of the track. It's a high speed or a fast right-hander, not high speed really, but you know, you're relying on the downforce fairly. You're relying on the downforce a big. I can't speak this evening, I apologise. You're relying a lot on the downforce through that right-hander if you can keep your speed up. And this is the driver's view, really, as the cockpit and the window wipers shake slightly as we move down through turns 3, 4 and 5. Now that first chicane, Jackson still 0.3 seconds off of Lavagnos. Dutton has managed to sneak his way into the top 3 overall. He's now 0.2 seconds off of Lavagnos. And it is a very close little lap battle, hot lap battle between those drivers. This is now Martin Mischke in the BMW. We were following him slightly earlier, and he is only 0.387 seconds off of Lavagno, so a little bit of time to make up. But as a pro driver who I know has a decent amount of pace, I think he could potentially sneak his way into the top 3 as well. Maybe demote Dutton or Hosko, depending on how the two of them do. Warburton is just hanging on in the AM class, currently P7. Oh, and looks like something has gone wrong. And this is potentially a server restart, because it suddenly went black. So I'm not sure whether this is just my internet going haywire. It shouldn't be. But we will be back in just a moment as we try and sort out this new issue. Plenty of those tonight, isn't it? And we'll see you in just a second. Top up on your drinks in the meantime. Top up on your snacks and get ready for quali in half an hour. We'll be back before then, though, to cover the rest of practice and see what our rough expectations are for this race. there we go. We are back. Looks like it was a server restart. Not sure exactly what for. I can quickly find out for you guys. And I do apologise for just the couple issues we've had this evening. It's not usually like this, but you know, it wouldn't be a small little, you know, race championship stream without some issues. Just yesterday I had pre-season testing for an F1 24 Esports Championship and we had issues galore. It felt very informal, but of course it does mean we get to interact with you guys a little more. It means we get to hear what you guys are up to and just get more of your feedback in as well. So then, as our drivers come across the line to set their laps once again, it's Verbrew on top now, definitely in provisional. I was about to say pole, but now he's dropped down to P2. So Dutton takes provisional first place, shall we say. It's not really pole, is it? What we can actually do now, that we have some time, is look at the liveries since it's a little lighter. So Dutton, Lexus, red, black and white. I think that is a default livery. Verbrew, lime, yellow and black, fairly standard, consistent with the rest of the season. Jackson once again going dark, looks of it, navy and dark blue, going futuristic. It's also got a bit of silver in there. Chard, okay, Chard is completely black as always. Turner, white, blue and black as per usual. Then it's Davies in, oh, that is lovely. That is a lovely little white, blue and yellow livery he's popped onto the Mercedes there. The cannon and, oh, that is a lovely livery. I'll definitely be savouring that as well. I've got Matthews next. Similar livery to last week. Blue, white and yellow, I think. Blue, red and yellow, but it's all kind of faded slightly. And there's Rucroft, usual blue, red and white, and you can see his name plastered across the front of the car. We've got Jordan, very similar livery to Davies as we saw earlier. And I do love the Mustang's look. It's a stunning colour. Then we've got Fox in the pits at the moment. And he's got another HSR Motorsport livery. Then it's going to be Mishka, as we saw earlier in the BMW. He's hiding somewhere. There's the BMW in the background, just using the default colours really. Then it's Taylor coming out of the pits now, yellow, red and black. Also a similar livery to earlier in the season. Then it's Hosker with a brand new livery now, white, black and green on the hood. Oh, and that is quite another neat new livery. It's always a joy to see these new ones come out. Then we've got Alfred in his usual green, or should I say lime actually, that looks a little more lime. It's giving me Verbrew vibes. And yeah, I quite like it. It's a good look. Look, it's reminiscent of a real Porsche car livery, which is quite nice. Then we've got Marquis and a BMW as well, red and yellow, completely different to what we've seen so far, giving me McDonald's. Yeah, I was about to say that looks like a McDonald's themed car, and I look forward to seeing this thing rip around. Tonight I probably won't be able to see the liveries as much as we saw. It just got fairly dark very quickly, but can't wait to see this livery in action later on in the season in the daylight. We've got Mouchard running a Pirelli livery, that's the Marlboro livery we saw at Kailami last week as well. Stunning work. McElwain in a white, aqua slash blue, and then black livery. I think that's also a fairly standard livery. We've got Bestow in a Porsche, also almost exact. I think that's exactly the same livery as on Alfred's car. Then it's Peters in also the exact same livery last week, just red, black and white. There's Pujari in a white Porsche. We're actually getting loads of Porsches this season. And then we've got Malott at the back in a very complicated bluish livery. There's just a whole load going on that car. Schubert in the Ferrari. That's going to be the blue and slightly light blue one. You can see poking out just there. Then Craddock, car 87, in the gold and black McLaren, who we saw fighting with Craig Hewlett and a couple other drivers in the mid-pack at Kailami last week. And then Dixon, last week's races winner. He won both races, so he'll be looking for a similar result today here at Monza. Then Lavagnos, just loaded in as well. Black Aston Martin. He's been running a green livery all season long, so not sure what's happening there. I think we may have missed a couple drivers just because they have been setting their times. This is von Unaker in another Ferrari, red Ferrari, similar to Peters. Then there's Warburton in the white Aston Martin. Any other drivers we need to know about? Worth, also in a BMW. This one looks to be a little darker than the rest. Yes, it still has the blue and red colours reminiscent of the BMW M Motorsport side of BMW, which is quite a nice touch. But ultimately, I think that is it when it comes to the liveries. But I have to say, out of the drivers that are here today, I think Davies. Maybe I should start doing this. Livery of the day is Davies. Just really simple, really professional colours. That, you know, it looks like there's been a lot of effort put into that thing, and you know, you could slap that on a real race car and it would look fine. And there's Christoph. Only reason I know it's that is because I see the car number and the car colour. Unfortunately, we saw plenty of incidents involving Christoph, car 57 at Valencia, and most of our drivers know him by name and by car number as well. And unfortunately, yes, it is not a good. It's not great being known for being the guy that just crashes into everyone, of course. And unfortunately, some of our drivers have been making a reputation for themselves involving that, and one of them has been Fox. Last season, he ended horribly at Alton Park as he, you know, I could just call up his car number now, 80, car 80. You would see that every 5 minutes or so during the race, just because of all the incidents. That was Alton Park. That was, you know, it was raining. Of course, that's average. Oh, and there's Davies with a massive off into the barrier at turn 3. That was huge. Oh my goodness, what happened there? Let's see if we can have a little look at that in the replay. So this was 30 seconds back. Oh, he just went straight on and tried coming through there, overcorrected it, and he's into the barriers across the track. Trying to take that corner with a little too much speed, a little bit of oversteer. The car just over-rotated. Well, this is not a good look, is it, when I'm switching through all the scenes? But yeah, that is Davies, unfortunately, struggling to keep the car on track through turn 3, but that was definitely a kind of extraordinary circumstance, if you will. Dutton now continues to lead the pack, 147.1, which is quite an improvement on the times that we had during practice before the server got restarted. Only about 16 minutes left in practice, 1-6, not 6-0, if my pronunciation was a bit weird for you maybe. But here we go, 147.112 is Dutton, closely followed by Mishka, 0.260 seconds off of Dutton's time, and then it's Chard half a second off of the leader. Jackson 0.8, and then it's a second onwards from Van Onneker in P5. Now you can start to see the classes closing up. They're starting to come closer and group together. You can see all the Pro-Ams from P4 to P8 all grouping up, that silver column. Then you've got all the YAMs, the red drivers grouping up at the bottom, and the Pro drivers are taking a little longer to group up. They've maybe got a couple different things they want to do during practice. Maybe they're trying to work on their qualifying setup, or the drivers at the top are doing that while these drivers at the bottom are working on race pace, or they're just working through some other stuff in general. As I've said so many times before, practice is a lot of speculating. So at this point, you know, we can only wonder what will happen during quali and the race. Now, if this is your first time joining us, welcome to the HSR Motorsport GT3 Season 3 Championship. We are currently at Monza for round 3 in our first evening race of the season. Evening races have always been very interesting to watch and commentate on as well. I remember last one we did was at Bathurst Mountain Panorama, and as you can imagine, it was nuts. It was scary. Initially it was fine. Turn 1, lap 1 was all okay. Even the mountain section, lap 1 was completely fine. But it was definitely as we approached the kind of middle section of the lap 2, middle section of the track, the really tight bits, you know, the bits that you're likely going to crash. Yeah, that's where it all happened. So unfortunately, that did happen 2 or 3 times. We had some major crashes, and funnily enough, Verbrew was one of the names that predominantly came up during the race, being a catalyst for one of the incidents. However, he has managed to impress this season. Really, he finished P10 twice last season and did not start 2 of the races and did not finish the rest of them. So really, he had an absolute rubbish championship, to be honest. And he's back in force now for Season 3, trying to make a change, and he is. Currently P1 in the championship, finishing on the podium every single race so far. He's really turned up the skill level. He's really turned up his pace over the season. Now, of course, last season he was in Pro class, so this might just be because he was in the wrong class if he wanted to sign up to Pro initially. Of course, sometimes you have no choice if the lobby's so full. We currently have no spots available in the championship, so at the moment you can only sign up as a reserve driver, and even then I'm not even sure that actually I'm not even sure that's actually part of it. We have reserve drivers, I know, for the GT4 championship, so I don't know. Check out our sim grid if you join the Discord group. Just join the server, and then there should be a GT3 race registration section, or just ask. You know, there's nothing wrong with just asking people whether you can sign up for the championship, whether there are some spots available. People maybe not being able to make the rest of the season. We are very early into our 3rd season of GT3 racing, and last season we did have a couple drivers who signed out due to time issues. And so just keep an eye out really for any opportunities, any chances to get racing. And if unfortunately you do not get a spot, then you'll have to wait until the next season starts, and then you've got to be quick. You've got to keep an eye out for when the announcements drop. Peters is slowly working his way up the grid. Peters was quite a dominant driver at Valencia and was also fairly regularly up at the top during... No, sorry, he was one of the drivers we were predominantly looking at Kailami. He was trying to challenge Dixon for P1 at some point. Unfortunately, Dixon's pace and consistency just kept him out of reach of that Ferrari, that red Ferrari, that is currently P8 on the grid. So I think Peters is Peters is one to look out for in terms of consistency and overall pace, as is Dixon. In terms of the other drivers, Chard he's just getting consistent results. He's not necessarily getting podiums as much, although he has had a couple this season. But when it comes to the points and how many he gets, it's just consistent finishes. That's all Chard has, and you know, it's clearly working so far. And to be honest, that's all you need in a championship, is just consistency. In terms of the Pro class, the Pro-Am class, drivers to watch out for will be Verbrew, of course, our championship leader. Jordan is quite a predominant name when it comes to the Pro-Am class podium finishes. And then Schubert Schubert got moved up a class. Von Orneker and Hosko seem to be two drivers to watch out for today as well. Let's go on board with Chard now, P3 on the leaderboard so far, P3 in his class as well. Half a second off of Dutton's time. With only 9 minutes left in practice. Whoa, and that's a blue Ferrari. Guess who it is? It's probably Christoph. Car 197 on track stationary. And that is going to be Taylor. There's a yellow flag for Taylor. But no, it was car 57 moving slowly through turn 7, parked across the track. Car 61. Turn 1 was also slow. Schubert, another yellow flag. And we do have some contact listed between car 777 and 113. 777 is Chard and someone else, so let's have a quick look at that replay. It's coming into turn 1. Oh, and that's a Porsche flying across the screen. Straight into the McLaren. A somewhat harrowing experience for the McLaren driver, I'm sure. Right, and 7 minutes of practice left. Drivers putting in their last little bits of effort to up their times, maybe work on their setups. And of course, as we said, there's a variety of things these drivers can do. There are quite a lot of variables. We don't know what could be going on in terms of setup. We don't know what these drivers could be practicing for. They could be working on race strategy, they could be setting up their cars, they could be doing quali strategy in terms of quali setup, getting stuff ready to go immediately the moment they hit quali, because as I said, it's a split quali, 20 minutes of split quali. It's going to be 10 minutes for the AM and Pro-Am drivers to take the track first, and then 10 minutes for the Pro drivers later in the second half, and that will be their time to shine. And this is Jordan in that yellow and blue Mustang coming across the line now. Currently P10 overall and P5 in his class. Now the grid is filling up. We have 32 drivers out here tonight. Priatko, P32 being the last driver to join us. We still have about 5 drivers not having set a time yet, that being Alfred, Malart, Craddock, Lavagnos and Priatko. Now Priatko last season was quite a force to be reckoned with. We saw him in action at Barcelona, we saw him in action at Zolder, and he's definitely got good pace to him, but he lacks the consistency and is unfortunately very aggressive when it comes to defending and overtaking. We saw that at Barcelona, as unfortunately he was the recipient of a little tap to the rear which spun him out on the final corner, and then just another nasty incident at turns 1 and 2, the S's, if you will, of the Barcelona circuit. But he has never failed to entertain as Jordan grabs a little too much curb, and he's tapped the barriers, trying to keep it straight, but ultimately has to concede some bodywork into those barriers along the side of the track just after Ascari. And that's the danger with turns 8, 9 and 10, as you grab a little too much curb and it just spits you out. There's a blue Ferrari just ahead, giving way to the other 2 Ferraris coming down, which will be Hosco and one of the red Ferraris. And I just realised that that is not a very helpful thing to say, is it? Because Ferraris are usually red. Car 77, that is going to be Peters just behind Hosco. Hosco manages to improve to P4. He's just over half a second off of Dutton's time. Now Chard is also trying to set the time, but here's Peters now, as we see Hosco at the end of the pit lane. Peters now P9, one of the Pro class drivers struggling to get past the traffic, struggling to get past the Pro-Am drivers, blocking the way into the top 5. Only 3 minutes left in practice, very little time, as our drivers start to prepare for qualifying, be that setup, so they might be out there doing some laps now, just working on the setup, maybe making the tow a little more aggressive. There's all sorts of things you can do to prep for it, maybe even just get the preset ready for it, so that when you load in, you hit setup, you hit your preset, and then you can get going. Because really, for the Pro-Ams and Ams at least, it's a very busy track, having to cover 2 classes instead of just one like the Pros, and so they need to try and get out there either as soon as possible or as late as possible. And the only way to do that is by getting your presets ready beforehand. And unfortunately, I still need to learn from that. I've tried, and every time I've pretty much failed to get a good quality result when I have done, and when I haven't managed to get those presets up and running in time, I'm then behind everyone else, and my laps are all ruined. So it is a struggle, but unfortunately that is just how it is for these lower class drivers. Not many out on track now, Priatko being one of the few. And that is, I believe, a new livery. Was sporting a yellow and blue livery last season. Very similar to another Ferrari we saw earlier in season 3. But now he's running a yellow and black liveried car, which I think is really quite nice. It's giving me, again, that Marquis. Was it Marquis? Or was it Craddock? I believe it was Craddock, actually, in the gold and black McLaren. And the last couple laps are being set now as our last drivers start coming into the lobby. Now we'll have a couple more that might join towards the end of qualifying, as long as they're in time for the race. That's fine. But of course, if you're a Pro-Am or an Am driver and you join after the first 10 minutes, you're sunk. You'll be starting from the back of the grid. Just due, again, to the split qualifying. Oh, and was that... I think it was a BMW just going straight on over the curbs. Not sure who that was. But it came in hot. It came in fast. And yeah, like we said in the live chat, turn 1 is going to be an absolute ball. Last time we were here in season 1, oh my goodness, that was a long time ago. Season 1, we had, I think, our first and only red flag ever. It occurs when, I think, about 25% of the lobby gets wiped on lap 1. And that's what happened at Monza back in season 1. Those were the days. Back in the good old days, which was 12 weeks ago. I make it sound so old, but it feels like a long time ago. But it also feels like not a long time ago. You know, it's one of those weird feelings. Priatko now trying to set his first time of the evening, but of course practice is coming to an end. He will only have... oh well, he will have no time left to do it. There we go. And quali starts. And we will be back for quali action in just a moment. And now qualifying gets underway. And we already have a Porsche parked across the track. And looks like Priatko is getting an early lap in. Is that against regulations? I think so. We might already have a driver choosing to go nuts at the start of the qualifying session already, which is slightly concerning really, considering that Priatko was part of the championship last season, so we should know better than to put in a lap right at the start. But we'll be following Jordan now, who is one of our faster, one of our top Pro-Am drivers. He's currently up at the top of the championship, battling Verbrew for position. So let's see how he does. Let's follow his lap. to the first chicane, and he will be one of the first drivers to set a lap. I believe Jim Fox is going to be the first driver, and then it's going to be Jordan to set their laps. And it is very much a case of, you know, just trying to get as many laps in as possible, because as we said, first 10 minutes is only for the Pro-Ams and AMs, while the last 10 minutes are for the pros. Now, just as we logged on, Priadko was doing some laps, and he is still doing some laps, so I'm sure the AMs and Pro-Ams are not happy with him for that. Right, and here we go. It is Jordan with the first valid lap time, 1:48.055, and he beats Verbrew by half a second to take provisional pole. We'll see who else manages to set some laps. Of course, it does depend on whether it's valid or not, and there's Priadko's time. As we said earlier, I'm not sure how to respond to this really, because Priadko is a pro driver. He should not be driving out there at the moment, and we have been stressing this quite a lot, that the first 10 minutes is only for the Pro-Am and the Am drivers. So I'm not quite sure what's happened there, some sort of miscommunication. The admins must be using the in-game chat to say that as well. Jordan manages to maintain provisional pole for his class, closely followed by Van Onneker, 0.2 seconds. 0.4 seconds is Hosco P3 in his class. Then it's going to be for the AM class, Davies, then Bestow, then Matthews, the Mercedes, then Porsche, then Ferrari. And we've seen Matthews excel this season, his very first season with us. Worth and Warburton also featuring in the podium positions fairly regularly, even in just the 3 races we've had so far this season. Jordan coming around the final corners now. Does he improve on his time to secure his provisional pole position in his class and to gap Van Onneker slightly? Let's see. Yes, he does improve by about half a second, in fact. Now he's just over half a second, I think about 0.7 seconds ahead of Van Onneker. Now that, of course, begs the question whether Van Onneker manages to improve his time and close the gap to Jordan in the last 4 minutes of qualifying. Hosco as well needs to be closing that gap. He's almost a whole second behind Jordan now. And here comes Van Onneker across the line, and he unfortunately does not manage to improve his time. Hosco also coming around the final corner. These guys are just coming in at a consistent pace. They're all relatively well gapped, and there's a good amount of space between them. 1.3 seconds off, and he actually takes P2 now. Only 0.1 seconds off of Jordan. So there's still potentially a little fight there for provisional pole. Manship has now suddenly jumped up in the AM leaderboard. So has Warburton, and Davies suddenly finds himself in P3 for the AM class. Jordan in that lovely livery of the day Mercedes, currently struggling to maybe find some pace. And we only have 3 minutes left in quali, so this is going to be coming thick and fast. And Priadko is still doing times. I cannot believe it. He's just abusing the situation right now. And I'm not sure whether the stewards are going to pick up on that at all. Verbrew certainly jumps up a couple positions as well. Just means he'll be starting a little further up the grid. Warburton has managed to close the gap to Manship, about 0.1 seconds, and suddenly Jackson takes P3 in the Pro-Am class. Davies coming across the line now. Unfortunately does not improve his time, he's still stuck in P3 for his class. But our top three then for the Pro-Am class is going to be Jordan, Hosco, then Jackson, 2 Ferraris and a Ford up at the top. Jackson just suddenly sneaking in there, only a minute and a half left of qualifying for these drivers. Verbrew is also stuck in there, he's actually 0.8 seconds off of Jordan, so there's still loads of potential for improvement. In fact, we can see Verbrew just behind Jackson right now, so if we keep an eye on both of them, we can get a fairly nice little run as they come across the finish line to finish their laps, or when they do. They're currently in the second sector of the track, coming up onto Ascari now, turns 8, 9 and 10. And the question is, do they manage to make positions or simply improve on their time? Jackson needs to improve by 0.3 seconds in order to see a position change. Von Honecker only 0.1 seconds, in fact less than a tenth of a second to improve. Verbrew though also 0.3 seconds to improve on his time. And we can see the drivers starting to come in now as qualifying ends. So this will be Jackson's last chance, coming across the line now. Oh, and he only manages to close the gap and unfortunately not make a position. So then it looks to be Manship, Warburton, then Davies for our AM top 3, and then the Pro-Am top 3 is going... Oh my goodness! And we've just had a huge uproar as Hosco comes across the line to take P1. He takes pole for his class. Jordan is still out though. He's going to be setting one final lap, so let's follow him now. Hosco suddenly rocketing up the leaderboards. He's taken provisional pole for his class, then followed by Van Orneker, and they both displaced Jordan, who was our provisional pole driver, but has just lost out. And looks like Worth has also managed to sneak into the top 3 starting positions for the AM class, currently P2, displacing Manship. Warburton has also managed to get past Manship. Oh my goodness, the last couple of laps coming in, proving to be the most desperate and the fastest. Here comes Jordan across the line, and he takes pole for Pro-Am. Oh my goodness, that was entertaining to watch. And meanwhile, Priatko is still out there. Now I'm sure there will be some sort of penalty applied, because it could not, you know, there's pretty much a driver race briefing before every race. We're 3 rounds into it, and Priatko should have known this by now. Last season we were doing the same thing as he goes off at Ascari, grabbing a little dirt. So I'm really confused as to what the situation is with Priatko. Does he think it's no longer split qualifying, or I'm really confused. I don't know. I'm at a loss for words. He's currently pole for the entire session, but that's because he's going to have a whole 20 minutes to qualify. So first of all, it's a violation of the regulations we've put in place, or the stewards put in place when it comes to split qualifying. But also, it's unfair to everyone because he gets twice the amount of track time as anyone else. And yes, I don't think he participated last race, but you don't get permissions to just do this kind of stuff. So unless I'm not aware of any factors, I think Priatko is going to be hit with a massive penalty at the end of today due to this qualifying issue. Schubert now, let's forget about it and start looking at the rest of the grid as Priatko once again goes off track, getting in the way of the other pro drivers. Schubert in the other Ferrari, currently P2, and there's Mouchard P3, but of course there are still plenty of drivers to set a lap. And oh my goodness, Priatko is getting involved in all sorts of issues. And this is going to be very interesting. He's currently in the pits for the first time this qualifying session, ironically. If he heads out again, I'm not sure what will happen. Whether the stewards might actually ban him, or I have no idea what will happen. Anyway, let's move on. This is now Miles Dixon, who has definitely shown his pace during the current season and the last season. Last season he was the only driver to challenge Topinka for the race lead fairly, and he managed to actually overtake the Czech at Barcelona in round 3 for the lead into turn 2, but unfortunately had a disconnection which ultimately cost him the race win and the race as well. He did not finish, unfortunately. And then at Alton Park, Topinka opted to start from the back of the grid, and this was finally his chance to shine, but his teammate unfortunately took the win after some issues, I think, with the weather and all sorts of factors that were involved, maybe some dodgy pit stops, and so Dixon unfortunately lost out on a race win last season. He got 2 podiums though, but yeah, as we said, he unfortunately not managed to get a race win. However, he started off the season with an absolute banger of a debut at Kailami. First time we visit it as HSR Motorsport, and he won both races, so definitely a driver to watch out for today. The question is, will he get pole? As it is, he's already invalidated his lap time and there's only 4 minutes left, and he's heading back to the pit, so I'm not sure how this is going to work out for him. At the top then, it is Dutton challenging Priatko's time now. It was only 5/100ths off of Priatko's time, and he still has 4 minutes to beat that 46.9 set by the Ferrari. So Dutton then, our pro challenger for the pro class pole position. Then it's going to be in P6 and P7 overall. Mischka and Schubert being P3 and P4 in their class overall. They are very closely matched, these two. There's only 0.033 seconds between these two. And actually, Schubert and Jackson have managed to set identical lap times. Peters also only 2/100ths off of Schubert. The gap between these drivers is really quite small. The margin for error in quali and during the race is going to be minuscule, and I think that was Turner in the background having a little moment coming through turn 7. But it is going to be Dutton, our main challenger for the pro class provisional pole position. As he comes through the final sector of the track now, let's see where he ends up. The decent run out of Ascari and on to the final straight before we hit the final corner. 3 minutes left. He maybe has 1 or 2 more attempts left at taking the fastest lap. Coming through Parabolica now onto the main straight. Where does he end up? And Dutton unfortunately does not manage to improve on his time. He was off by 0.1 seconds off of his best time. However, Mischka has managed to take pole position while we were following Dutton. Mischka in the BMW now with a 146.840, beating Priatko by 6/100ths. Again, as we said, the gap between these drivers, it's going to be small. The competitiveness of these drivers, and the competition is going to be really quite tight as we race here at Monza, a track that everyone is comfortable with. Well, not everyone's comfortable with, everyone knows about. So, our top three then for the Pro Class Championship is going to be Mishka, Priatko, then Dutton as it stands. Now, Dutton is the only one out there at the moment of those three drivers, and as I say that, Priatko comes back out again. Now, to be honest, the fact that Priatko only got P2 after... I mean, to be fair, he said it right at the start of the session, but considering he's had 20 minutes, pretty much, to qualify, even with the extra time, he still has not managed to improve. Now, whether Dutton will manage to get past Priatko in qualifying, let's see. He approaches the final section of the racetrack. There's Lavagnos setting a time to take P4. I have no idea what that sound was, but here he comes across the line. Does Dutton improve? Still no. He has maybe one last shot at this. Chard also coming out now. Schubert, that's our top six. Then it's going to be Peters, then Turner in the Pro Class Championship. Oh my goodness, what has been happening to these Pro Class drivers? Dixon also not quite comfortable in terms of setting a lap early on. And we are approaching the final 30 seconds of qualifying. Now there is going to be a little timer that comes on to allow these drivers just enough time to finish their lap. But it'll be a question of, do they improve that time? Peters has just invalidated his lap time, and there's Dutton going off track. Let's see if we can follow Dixon on his lap. If he is out. Now, actually, Dixon has just taken P5 in the class, just as the timer comes to an end. This then is Lavagnos P4. He has 0.1 seconds to make up to Dutton. Well, not even, just over 500ths to make up coming around the final corner. And that is going to be our starting standings for the race. Mishk, Priatko, then Dutton for the Pro Class, Jordan, Hosko, then Van Onneker in the Pro-Am class, and then finally Manchip, Warburton and Worth, our Am class top three. And after an intense qualifying, this is going to be, I'm sure, an incredible race, as these drivers are going to be vying for position, pushing each other to the limit, and I'm sure at turn one, pushing each other over the limit. Join us when we reconvene for the race. So grab your popcorn, grab your drinks, get comfortable. This is going to be scary. And you join us now for the race start. 60 minutes of racing, only broken up by a single mandatory pit stop for fuel. And boy, have we seen controversy during qualifying and practice already. Priatko jumping the gun during split qualifying. He was only meant to come out in the last 10 minutes of qualifying, but as a result, he's going to be investigated at the end of the race. He lines up on the front grid, currently P2 overall and for the Pro class. Then looking a bit further back, we have Jordan in the Mustang taking provisional pole for the Pro-Am class. He's done particularly well over this season. It's a consistent result for him so far. Will he survive the race start though?
30 seconds.
30 seconds till the race start. Manchip lines up in P1. That yellow Ferrari that stands out. You can see the lights coming on now as we prepare for the start of the formation lap, which is going to be a full lap around the circuit. And these drivers definitely need it tonight, where the track temperatures are a little lower than usual. This is our first evening race of the season. We've done a couple before in the Season 2 Championship, Round 1 and Round 5, Silverstone and Bathurst. And last time we were in the dark at Bathurst, we saw plenty of chaos, and I'm sure tonight, Turn 1, Lap 1 is going to be an absolute wreckfest. Now, one driver that did, unfortunately, not perform as well as we expected is Dixon. Now, he has been at the top for the entire season in Season 2. He was performing right at the top during the races. He had incredible pace, and he was the only one who managed to challenge Topinka, but unfortunately consistency and ultimately just bad luck as well prevented him from getting a race win. He got 2 podiums though, but unfortunately, yes, he did not manage to get consistent results, and just pure bad luck as well just prevented him from finishing where he wanted to. But he started off with an absolute banger of a debut in Season 3 at Kailami, winning both races from pole, so he shouldn't have any issue keeping up with these drivers. But now it's a question of, will he manage to keep it clean? Will he manage to overtake these drivers? Let's see what happens. Now, one driver who's managed to impress this race so far, this race weekend, is going to be Hosko in that white and black Ferrari. He's been pushing for results all season long, and he's finally seeing some of that come true now. He had a battle for pole during qualifying, and he's out there now, lining up in P2 for his class, just behind Jordan. I do apologise. Again, just some issues, but we're working to get it all sorted out. I'll try and be as honest as I can. There we go. All good now. Just in time. Manchip also performing on par as he has been doing for the entirety of the season so far. And I believe his debut season with us at HSR. So impressive performance from the driver in the Ferrari. Currently taking pole for his class. Warburton and Worth also getting involved in that fight up at the top. Mishka, though, I think this is not his first time starting at the front of the grid at HSR. So he knows the drill. And the question is, will he manage to keep the other 30 drivers behind him? And just as we come around the final corner, someone is starting from the pit lane. That's going to be Jim Fox, maybe not starting his car in time. 33 drivers lining up here at Monza for round 3 now. Coming through Curva Parabolica to line up our first night race of the season and our 4th race of the season overall as well. And the green flag waves at Monza. The cars are going to be jostling for position as they all race down to turn 1. It's going to be a long run. Looks like Dixon is getting into the wake of Dutton. He's getting a little bit of slipstream coming into turn 1. There's the Ferrari of Priatko going around the outside of Dutton. He's still there, and it's fortunately all relatively clean, and I'm not sure whether there is any conflict down at the back of the grid. Looks like car 77 has had an issue. Car 77 is moving slowly, and that looks like Peters dropping down the order. Peters indeed has dropped far down the order. He's dropped 25 positions. There's definitely something that happened there. We'll be having a look at that later on in the race. Looks like there's a lot of jostling for position as another driver loses it. That's going to be car 94 dropping down the order. Dixon pitting already. He must have had something happen, and momentarily the leaderboard is going to be going haywire for just a second. It's Dutton and Chard now. Chard in the black McLaren looking for a move on Jordan in the Ford just ahead. There he is looking down the inside into Ascari, but ultimately nothing comes of it. It is a very tricky part of the track to try and overtake. But if he can set this up nicely for the straight, then he could just ride that slipstream. There's also an Aston Martin, Lavagnos, going into the wake of Dutton now as well. Mishka has had a fairly good start. He's managed to stay out ahead. Then it's Priatko, and then it's going to be Jordan. So ultimately it is going to be Dixon that loses out the most here. But here is Jordan trying to fend off Chard now. He's definitely seeing him in his rear view mirrors. Here's Chard now. He's got a little bit of speed coming into turn 1. He's going for it down the middle, but he's sold one of his signature dummies. We've seen plenty of those. Oh, and that was the Aston Martin in the background. Lavagnos getting really close to the back of Dutton, almost collecting him as they come into that first corner. And Lavagnos is dropping. Lavagnos has suddenly just disappeared. Dutton is now on the rear end of Chard. There's the move down the inside from Dutton, the Lexus on the McLaren into the chicane. They're still side by side, but ultimately Dutton backs out just as they get through there, and Lavagnos has suddenly disappeared as well. Lavagnos now down in P7, fortunately not losing out too much. He's now down in P7. He was P6 before. He's only 0.2 seconds over the Ferrari of Jackson ahead. Onaker is not far behind the Aston Martin. And all sorts of things happening at Monza tonight. Lavagnos still very close on the rear of that Ferrari, going slightly wide through Ascari. And he's still just sniffing, he's still just waiting on Jackson. There's a little bit of movement further back as well. I think that's Manship and Turner having a little fight there. Sorry, that is Worth and Turner. There's Turner down the inside, Worth around the outside, and they're jostling, they're bumping, they're scraping as they come through Parabolica. Worth is forced out wide, and there's the Ferrari of McElwain also taking advantage of Worth going wide. They're going to be side by side coming into turn 1 if their speeds are similar. But looks like the Ferrari emerges just ahead of the BMW. There's Turner just ahead, also trying to make a move down the inside of Manship, but he's not quite close enough. He was slightly, he had his nose just peeking down the inside, ultimately not enough to get in there. Chard and Dutton just exchanged positions slightly further up, P4 and P5 overall. That is for the last spot on the podium, P3 in the Pro class. So they are going to be fighting that position all race long. Mishka, meanwhile, has been pulling out a 1 second gap on Priatko, and Priatko has managed to pull out a 4 second gap on Jordan. So now the gaps are going to start increasing. Now back down to Manship, Worth, Turner and McElwain. This is Worth in the BMW. And looks like Manship is having a couple of issues. He's dropping down the order. We saw Turner have a go at him earlier. Looks like he's managed to get past now. And the BMW will also be looking to make similar progress up the field. Currently this is the battle for P1 in the AM class. Manship and Worth fighting for the race lead there. And just ahead is Turner in the McLaren. Of course, slipstream. Oh, and that's Manship gone wide slightly. The BMW of Worth also getting a bit of oversteer, and unfortunately has not been able to take advantage of a little bit of slipstream. But meanwhile, here's McElwain having a look down the inside. He's got way more speed coming through there. Is he ahead by the time they hit the apex or the braking zone? Not quite. He is down the centre. Oh, and he collects Manship. McElwain into Manship. The two Ferraris come together at turn 1. The deep move from McElwain, unfortunately, takes out the yellow Ferrari 2 positions ahead. That was unfortunate. McElwain just making progress past the AM drivers, and he's just ruined 2 races. He's ruined his own, and he has unfortunately also ruined Manship's race. Manship, who was leading the race, now it's going to be Worth taking the lead in the AM class, followed by Davies in P2, and then Warburton P3 in that class. Really unfortunate circumstances there. Now there is quite a close gap. Looks like there's been an off from Smith in the Aston Martin. All sorts of cars going off. There's the BMW, the McDonald's branded BMW. There's Taylor getting past the Aston Martin. Schubert also trying to make a position. That's Hosco also getting involved there. There's another McLaren of Malott maybe as well, as the leaderboards go slightly haywire. Just a little further up is going to be Schubert making a move on the Porsche of Bestow into Parabolica. We've just caught that one in time. Textbook move from the pro driver. Now Smith and Fox are fighting closely. This is Smith in the Aston Martin tailing the McLaren. He's got a little bit of tow coming into turn 1. Is it going to be a desperate lunge? No, it isn't. He's just come out of the slipstream, having a look down the inside, but unfortunately he does not have enough speed to get by before they hit turn 1, that right-hander. And now the grid starts to slow down, except right at the top where Dutton and Jordan are going to be fighting for P3 overall. However, when it comes to the classes, there's going to be no difference, except that Dutton wants to get ahead of the Pro-Am driver so that he can keep Lavagnos behind, because Lavagnos has set the fastest lap time, so he's looking fairly strong today. And we saw that during practice and qualifying as well. And Dutton knows this, but he was also one of those strong drivers during the previous 2 sessions. Let's just see how close Lavagnos is to the rear of Dutton. This is going to be the battle for P3 in the Pro Class Championship. As we said, he just wants to get ahead of Jordan so that he can keep that Aston Martin behind. And he's just inching closer. And of course, it's going to be the straight that is going to be the scariest bit. There's a Porsche holding up the race leaders. That Aston Martin is really close to the rear of the Lexus now. The Lexus taking the inner line. That Aston Martin is not quite ahead yet. It's just keeping him around the outside, and that Porsche is going to get involved. And Dutton defends from Lavagnos. That Porsche is still there. Oh, and I hope he does keep it clean. And Dutton, fortunately slipping through there for him, but unfortunate for Lavagnos, who's being held up now. So that gap has increased slightly, but not by too much. It is still just under half a second between the two of them. A little further back down the grid, this is going to be Hosco, Rucroft and Taylor. There's the move from Hosco, looking down the inside of Rucroft, and oh, it's all shaky. There's going to be contact between those two drivers, Hosco and Fox, coming together slightly. Taylor just waiting for an opportunity, coming through turn 3 now via Sono, and Taylor is very close to the back of that McLaren. The two McLarens, the yellow one coming down the inside, maybe into the chicane. No, he keeps it slightly further back. That is not one of the most recommended spots to go for an overtake here at Monza. But wow, first 11 minutes of the race have definitely been very entertaining. Hosco's gone slightly wide. The Ferrari is defending from Rucroft now, but ultimately that has come to nothing. Sorry, that was not Rucroft, that was Fox who was defending. Here's Rucroft now defending from Fox. Fox trying to go the long way around into Ascari. Is this going to work? I'm not sure, but he has made it past before they hit the apex. No problems for the red McLaren. And a little jostle for position down in P22, P23 and P24. And the gaps start to solidify now. Mishka still holding the Pro Class lead. Jordan similarly in P3 overall. And Worth with a surprise P1 lead of the race in the AM class. Now let's see if we can have a look at what happened between some of those drivers. Car 66, whether that's going to be Turner. Car 61 is Schubert. Fox is unfortunately involved there as well. 77 going to be Peters. 66 is Turner. 84 and 8112 going to be Yatko and Dutton coming together. Car 9 and 27, that's Mouchard. Peters once again involved there. Let's have a look at the race start again then, shall we? From Jackson's point of view, he's currently P6, P2 in his class actually. He's managed to climb that grid fairly comfortably throughout the race start. Let's have a look at this restart then. Sorry, not the restart, the race start. Just give us a moment as we get the replay time sorted. Again, just some issues with the software. And it looks like there is issues with the replay software. I do apologise. We're trying to get this sorted out as soon as we can, but it is giving issues. So give us one moment please as we try and get this screen back up and running. And unfortunately the software is giving us hassles I'm struggling to get this thing working again. Apologies, ladies and gents, this is a huge failure on the software side of things. It's giving us huge issues now. So we are trying to fix it, so please give us one moment as we try and sort this out. And apologies for the delays, ladies and gents. It was a horrific software failure. However, we are back up and running now, and hoping to get back into the action. Looks like Jordan has dropped 2 positions overall, but still maintains his race lead in the Pro-Am class. Worth has managed to gap Davey slightly for the AM class lead. So things are relatively unchanged when it comes to the overall grand scheme of things. However, Mishka is gone. Mishka is now down on P27. He's had an incident somewhere. So Mishka, our race leader, is now down at the bottom of the field. Unless that was just the software having me on again. Yes, he's still back up at the top. Because if he had fallen down, then he probably would not be racing in this manner. So I do apologise once again. Things have just been going a bit haywire with the software. It's Marky and Mellet. Oh my goodness, it looks like Melot has gone into the wall and is parked under the bridge at Ascari. And yes, we do actually have the replay for that this time. And here we go. This is now Malot, and oh my goodness, just a little tap and it sent him into the wall rather violently, I have to say. That seemed very violent for the magnitude of the touch, if you will. Matthews is currently battling with Brum for P24. There's a slow Aston Martin involved as well, but I thought I saw rain there for a second. Unfortunately, not yet. This then is Jackson, Chard and Verbery, P7, P8 and P9, a Ferrari and 2 McLarens, the closest gap on the entire grid. Chard is half a second off of Jackson, so you might see that gap close slightly by the end of the pit straight. And they are pretty much the closest gap of interest at the moment. And this is close enough for slipstream to come into effect. So could we see a signature move from Chard, the little dummy move to the inside, get Jackson off kilter into turn 1, and then he just has a perfect run at him from outside. It wasn't close enough, unfortunately, to do that. Now elsewhere on the grid, Brum has lost out to Matthews down in P22. So Brum slipping down the order. And this is still Chard and Jackson. The closest gap at the moment, under half a second between the Pro and the Pro-Am driver. So it looks like Dutton has taken a little bit of a tumble. The Vanyos is now up into P3 overall and for his class, Dutton down into P4. So it might just have been that the Vanyos has been absolutely sending it through the last couple of minutes. And unfortunately, those couple of seconds that we weren't covering seem to be the seconds that he was actually making a move. Fox has just pitted down at the bottom of the leaderboard. And this now is when the drivers start to come in for their pit stops. All the strategies start to play out. Do they pit early? Do they get the undercut? Do they go a bit later? Get fresher tyres, go for kind of a semi-quali style lap? And the back markers start to get involved now as well. Closer gap though is between Manchip and McElwain, 2 Ferraris battling for P14. An Am and a Pro-Am, they're coming down into the final corner now, coming down into Parabolica, and that yellow Ferrari is defending as hard as he can from that menacing black, white and aqua Ferrari, who's gone slightly wide at turn 11 now. That will bring Manchip into play, potentially making use of the slipstream, and if Manchip has a good exit, then he's left McElwain in the dust, and Peters can then get involved to start working on him now. Peters having to look down the inside, trying to put McElwain off slightly, and actually this is exactly the position we found ourselves in right at the top of the Am leaderboard earlier, when McElwain took out Manchip, who was leading the Am class leaderboard. Manchip has managed to fight his way back up into P3 in his class, so very good recovery from the man in the yellow Ferrari. Now it's just down to McElwain to make it clean, and he's down the inside now. They come into turn 4. Turn 6, he's gone down the inside and he's gotten the move done. That's McElwain up into P14. Manchip now defending from Peters as well. These 3 drivers are having a little battle. Now it's going to be primarily between Manchip and Peters. The Pro behind looking to make some progress up the field. He hasn't made much progress during the race, but he is looking for some, and Manchip just concedes the position. He doesn't fight that at all. Peters just gains that position very easily. Then it's going to be Jackson and Davies slightly further up the field, but they are not the closest gap. Actually, the closest gap is going to be between Turner and Worth. Again, a Pro and an Am. McLaren on the BMW, 0.3 seconds separating the 2. Closest gap on field at the moment. Oh, and Turner's gone in deep. He's coming very fast indeed, but manages to get it stopped in time and keeps it out the rear of the BMW just ahead. Looks like Warburton is having a battle with Manship, and McElwain's also getting caught up in there. A very quick position swap. Manship has dropped a couple positions. McElwain up a couple positions, same as Warburton and Peter. So I wonder whether there's been an incident, whether there's maybe been a collision. 999, yes there has. Let's have a quick look at what happened just a couple seconds ago. Just coming through here on Manship into the back of McElwain. I think that was maybe McElwain trying to concede the position again, trying to let Manship through after maybe gaining an unfair advantage, and then yeah, he just hit the rear of him, not expecting that scenario. Now Brum and Christoph are close together. This is now P27 and P28, a Pro-Am and an Am. There's Christoph on the grass slightly coming into Parabolica. He's defending heavily from that black McLaren, but unfortunately he can't do anything about it. Brum up into P27. Once again, right back up in the midfield now is Turner and Worth. Turner down the inside of Worth now into turn 1, and he's just out of reach. That P10 position for Turner, just staying out of reach. Worth, though, wants to keep the pro driver behind. The only issue is, as he's defending from Turner, Davies closes that gap. Davies is only 5 seconds behind Turner, and so if Worth ends up defending too heavily, he's ultimately going to be losing time, and that's ultimately just not going to help him. And there it is, there's Worth moving over to let Turner through. The different classes work together to help each other in their races. And yes, Davies now 4.3 seconds off of Worth, so that was really just something waiting to happen. So we could potentially see a battle between Davies and Worth towards the end of the race. Now we have actually had two DNFs this race already. Dixon left very early on. I still have no idea what happened there, and unfortunately, due to the disconnection, we can't figure out what happened until after the race. Now there is contact listed between car 11 and car 8. Let's have a quick look at what happened here. It's coming through right-hander, and Matthew's getting very quick, and he's just giving himself a little bit of space, a little nudge as they come through the bridge. And that was that was a very interesting scenario there. I could see the dialogue there between the two drivers. Hey man, give me some space. I want some space. Anyways, this is now McElwain on Peters, P13 and P14, two Ferraris and a Porsche just ahead, one of the back markers, potentially going to get involved at some point. McElwain is just under half a second off Peters. However, their bests are separated by about half a second, so I cannot imagine McElwain getting past Peters unless something has gone horribly wrong. McElwain is only 0.3 seconds off of the red Ferrari ahead. And if Peters gets caught up on the back markers, then McElwain will be looking to make some good progress up the field. Unfortunately, not in the class position. Overall, yes, but class is not really going to make a difference. He is currently P4 in his class, but Verbrew is miles ahead. So I do not think McElwain will be making up any progress when it comes to the class standings. Racchio and Lavagnos have gone for a mid-race pit, and looks like some of the other drivers are hanging out a little longer. This is now the battle between Rucroft and Fox, the two McLarens closely battling, and there's Jim Fox down the inside of Rucroft. It's a late move mid-corner. Fox is going the shorter distance, and he's down the inside now. He's got the defensive line, but Rucroft is just there. He's still side by side. They're still not quite giving up yet. Coming into turn 1, P25 and P26, it's still Fox down the inside, and they almost stop the cars completely there as Fox moves up into P25. A long move between those two. It looks like Schubert and Alfred have just managed to swap positions. Let's have a quick look at what happened there. So there's Schubert coming out of the slipstream, down the inside of Alfred, a little nudge. But ultimately, still not quite ahead actually. So it must have just been an attempt at that. And looks like Vanyos has just got a stop and go 30 seconds penalty. You've got to be joking. Lavanyos, after a pretty good first half of the race, now has to deal with a penalty. That must come from the pit stop he just took. Maybe switching off the pit limiter a little too soon. This is Schubert still on the back of Alfred, P27 and P28 battling now. And there's the Ferrari making a move down the inside. They're side by side, coming into Ascari. And ultimately Alfred just backs out slightly to give the position to the faster Ferrari behind. Because it is very difficult to fight through there, and that green Porsche's just lost out. No, fortunately he's not lost out to Marquis yet, but Schubert then up into P27. Mishka now coming into the pits. And now the drivers start to do their pit strategies. You can see them starting to play out now. 28 minutes left in the race, just under half of the race left, just under half an hour. And you can see on the left hand side of your screen there's going to be a little bar right next to the car number for each driver, and that is going to denote the pit stop number. If it's green, they've done their one mandatory pit stop. If it's still orange with a 1, they still have to do their one mandatory pit stop. And Lavanios has just come in to serve his 30-second penalty. So he'll be losing plenty of positions there in the midfield. Jackson and Davies then, P20 and P21, 0.8 seconds separating them. They're the closest drivers between everyone now. Looks like there has been a couple more incidents between McElwain and another driver, car 12. I have a feeling that's going to be Alfred. Oh, that is between Alfred and McElwain. That's a very interesting... Oh my goodness, and there's Alfred and Christoph coming together at turn 7. I cannot believe it, the two back markers coming together. And Christoph, an unfortunate recipient. Let's have a look at a replay involving Alfred a little bit earlier. So this is McElwain coming down the inside. Oh, at Parabolica, and he just forces him wide. That was very unfortunate. And yes, then the issue between car 12 and 57. Let's have a look at what happened just a second ago once again. And yeah, Alfred just hitting Christoph on the rear, sends the Ferrari into a spin, facing their own way. However, it looks like Christoph has been involved in the contact between him and Brum. Oh my goodness, there seems to be plenty of things happening now. This is Brum fighting with Schubert for P26. A Pro-Am and an AM driver. Pro-Am and a Pro driver, my apologies. Let's just have a look at what happens here. Turn 6, Schubert trying to defend. No, sorry, they are coming into the chicane. All the turns look the same here at Monza in the evening at 10:20 in the evening. And Brum then half a second off can see how hard they're pushing that BMW in the background. I think that is potentially worth trying to make ground. Sorry, that's not worth. That's Mishka, the race leader in the Pro class, trying to make something happen. There is a incident between Manchip and Taylor and Priadko now. Let's have a quick look at what happened there. Seems to have been a little bit of a change for position. Let's check the replay. So this is Manchip, and there's Priadko in the background. Oh my goodness, and Manchip goes spinning round and round. And oh my goodness, that was quite a violent... That was very violent. That was a little... I don't know what happened there. Was it a little bit of oversteer and then Priadko just didn't have time to react? I think it probably went something like that. Manchip then into the pits for his first... well, not the first mandatory, but his first pit of the race. Lavagnos now re-emerges P19 overall, stuck behind a Pro-Am driver, McElwain. He'll be looking to make progress on him soon, coming down into turn 7. He was in the middle of the track looking at a potential move on that Ferrari ahead, but he's still just a little too far behind. 0.2 seconds separate the two now. There he is going around the outside at Ascari, and the Ferrari just lets him through. It's going to be... everyone seems to be scared of overtaking through Ascari. It is a scary section of the track to take normally, let alone overtake on. And this is car 13. Let's see, car 999. Let's see if we can have a bird's eye view of what happened concerning that incident earlier. So this is now that Manchip and McElwain incident. Yes, there's the oversteer, and unfortunately he just couldn't get out of the way quick enough, or he would have been into the gravel. And that's Manchip re-emerging now, P17. Still P3 in his class though. Although Matthews has not pitted yet, so there's still plenty to happen when it comes to the overall race planning and the race strategy. Now Mishka has taken the fastest lap of the race so far, 146.9, which is close to quali pace, not quite. And is that still a little bit of damage to Manchip's car on the front? Not sure. Let's check whether he's maybe spent a little more time in the pits. So where is he? Manchip down in P22. Spent a minute 19 seconds in pits, which is slightly longer than the other drivers, but not excessively so. So he might have had minor damage. Fortunately, he didn't hit a barrier when he got spun round. It was definitely a shock for him to find himself facing the wrong way on the racetrack. So then, it's still Mishka running at the front for the Pro class, then Jordan leading in the Pro-Am class, and Worth currently P2 in the Am class, as Matthews still needs to pit though. Unless there's been some sort of miscommunication between himself, his engineers, or maybe even software. Matthews has not pitted yet though, so there is still... But I'm not sure whether Worth will emerge behind Matthews or ahead when he pits. It's going to be an interesting scenario. And also a question of whether Matthews is going to maintain his position within the top 3. Just been a change for position between Taylor and McElwain. Davies having a little battle with Mouchard now. Maybe vice versa, there's a little bit of damage to the front of that McLaren. He is 0.7, 0.6, 0.5 seconds. He is closing on the McLaren ahead, so it's possible that there is aero damage to that McLaren. Chard has just made a position on Verbrugge. Matthews is dropping because he is in the pits. This is going to be an interesting run down into turn 1. Davies does have a little more speed. The Mercedes is coming up on the rear of the McLaren. There it is, the little move down the inside. Does he get it done before they hit the braking zone? Not quite. But the McLaren is still there. Still side by side, and that McLaren lunges for the inside apex and is still in P13. That Mercedes running around the outside of turn 3 now. Davies giving everything he can while Mouchard tries to defend his position. And Davies then finally getting past through turn 3, the long right-hander, after an interesting little interaction down at turn 1. That's Davies up into P12. Von Orneker and Chard seem to have had an overtake very recently. Let's see if we can have a look at what happened there. So there's Von Orneker on Chard, coming through Ascari. Oh, and just a little wobbly. So it might have been just been a very temporary moment where he was ahead. Jackson suddenly dropping down the grid. Oh my goodness! Mouchard is involved with a BMW further down. That's P13, Mouchard and another driver coming together. There's Taylor making a position. There's there's McElwain making a position as well. And then there's Hosco in the background also looking for another position. What has happened there? It's like that McDonald's liveried BMW has collided with the McLaren. They're still racing, but there it is, the McLaren peeling off into the pits. You can see the amount of damage to the front of the car. That whole hood has been lifted off the front, and there's going to be a significant amount of aero damage there, and he's going to be pitting for a very long time. Let's have a look at the incident. So here's the McLaren. Oh my goodness! And that was a very slow moving BMW indeed. And then as they try and rejoin, they have another bit of contact. Oh my goodness, racing in the evening is no joke. There's quite an interesting battle happening now between Fox, Rucroft and Bestow as they come round turn 3. Rucroft is trying to close that gap. We saw a little battle between the two earlier on. A lovely little move down into turn 1. But ultimately they are in two different categories. But Rucroft is within half a second now, looking to make a move as they come through the second sector, almost into the third sector of the racetrack. And Fox is also within a second of the driver ahead, Manship. And again, these drivers are in different classes, but of course they want to keep progressing up the leaderboard because you never know what happens. And the drivers ahead are going to be wanting to defend their positions so that they can have a little bit of a buffer to the drivers in their class just behind. So 0.7 seconds between each of those three cars. Coming into Parabolica, who has the better exit speed through here, who maintains their speed. And looks like Mouchard just got a stop and go 30 seconds penalty, as well as Davies in P2 for the AM class. Has just gotten a drive through, and that is likely for track limits. There's Manship slowing on the straight, and I think he's just letting Fox through. But that's brought Rucroft into the fight now with Manship. And this will be for P5. maybe potentially P4 in their class. And Mishka in the background there flashing to get by these back markers. Oh my goodness, the last quarter of this race, the last 25% is looking very interesting indeed. Davies now has to pit, unless, I think that was for track limits. That's the only thing that makes sense for me at this point in time. Car 10, there's no incident between car 10 or anyone else, so yes, it has to be for track limits. And there he is coming into the pit lane now, and is that the Marlboro McLaren once again coming in of Mouchard to serve his stop and go? Yes, it is. Two drivers coming in to serve their penalties. Now, where will Davies re-emerge, though, is my question. Because now Worth is up in P10 overall. He's going to have a massive gap to the drivers behind. And Davies actually emerges right in front of Bestow now. And there's Bestow in the Porsche coming down into turn 1, and Davies has just managed to make it out ahead. And the slow battle continues there, and there's the Porsche lunging down the inside of turn 2. And through the right-hander, Davies ultimately then loses out on 2 positions to Warburton and Bestow, but he is still within reaching distance, still within fighting distance of Bestow, so he could potentially still finish on the podium, just not P2 as he was going to just a couple minutes ago. Oh my goodness, and he's gone a little slidey as well, just coming out of that chicane, just coming out of Seconda Variante, turn 4 and 5. And late race controversy for this driver. Broom has come into the pits again. Not sure what that's about. Oh, Broom has a drive-through. He's likely serving that at the moment. And looks like there is contact between Davies and Bestow, but that was just as they came, just as Davies came out of the pit lane. Oh, and a lot has been happening this evening. And unfortunately, we also missed quite a bit of what happened when we had our software issues, but we're up and racing again for 12 minutes more. 12 minutes left in the race. And Davies is currently chasing Bestow for the final spot in the podium positions in the AM class. It's currently 0.7 seconds, but a closer gap is up in P8 and P9. Pujari and Turner were very close at some stage. Davies drops just, he's on the second of the limit. There's about a second separating them, but he's got a magnificent run through turn 3. He's had a brilliant start coming down the inside of the Porsche now. And that's Davies up into P3 for his class. After a drive-through penalty left him with no choice but to re-emerge fighting with Bestow. He's finally managed to get that move done and taken P3. Now there is a developing battle between McElwain and Hosco, the two Pro-Am drivers. McElwain having a bit of a slightly wobbly exit. This is now Hosco following the other Ferrari, coming into Parabolica, and oh, they're all shaky. Hosco not sure what to expect from McElwain, and we have seen a little bit of action from McElwain earlier, taking out the AM class leader and also just having a couple other incidents. But here we go, 0.3 seconds separating the two Pro-Am class drivers. Now this is for class position. They are going to be fighting for points, not necessarily the podium, because that is slightly out of reach now. But it is championship points nonetheless. So Matthews is also catching up to Schubert now within half a second, and Turner is 0.1 seconds off Pujari, but we are currently following Hosko and McElwain, 0.4 seconds separating the two Ferrari drivers. It is almost 11 PM virtual time with 10 minutes left in the race, third round of the championship. Hosko looking very solid through the second sector, and he maybe has a little bit of a run on to McElwain, coming through the fast left-hander kink through Saraglio, now down into turns 8, 9 and 10. There's the move down the inside into Ascari. It was a look, and it just maybe put McElwain off, so where his exit is now compromised. And now Hosko has that toe ahead. He can maybe get the move done before they hit the Parabolica. There it is, a look down the inside, but again, just no move. He knows he can play it slightly patiently, so there is no one behind, but at the same time, he doesn't want to be hanging around. He wants to be closing the gap to the drivers ahead. But with only 8 minutes left in the race, whether he could do anything about it if he were to get ahead is going to be the big question. Looks like Mishka and Priatko just had a little bit of a fight up in P1. Only 1 second separating the two. 1.82 seconds now. But Hosko and McElwain are both still fighting. They're still within a reasonable gap of each other. 0.7 seconds, so within a second of each other. And we saw Hosko just consistently faster, but ultimately nothing came of it. A little further down the field, it's going to be Schubert, Rucroft and Matthews battling for P22. Rucroft in the McLaren ahead. Here's Schubert in the Ferrari trying to get a little bit of toe, and Matthews in the background trying to... He's just waiting to pick up the pieces. There's the move from the Ferrari down the inside into the chicane. Turns 4 and 5. And he gets by. There's Matthews also making a move down the inside. And Rucroft just holds on to 23rd position. This is going to be between Rucroft and Matthews now for position within their class. It's like Rucroft has a little bit of space now to breathe, but not much. Matthews is only 0.4, 0.3. He is closing, he's got a little bit of toe, and of course he'll have that back straight to use as well just after Ascari. Oh, but he might not have to wait that long. He's getting really impatient now. The car's kind of wobbling side to side. He's wondering whether he should have made a move into turn 8, but ultimately decided otherwise and is now 0.7 seconds behind Rucroft. Hosko is now 0.2 seconds off of McElwain, coming through the first sector of the racetrack, coming into turns 4 and 5. There's a look from Hosko. It's still a little far back, and McElwain is just holding on. Hosko with a better exit. Is this his chance into turn 6? He's almost alongside. His nose is just there. And there it is. Oh my goodness, and they collide. And Hosko, I think, hits the barrier. And that has turned out as badly as it could have done. Here's Warburton trying to take advantage of the situation and just... Oh my goodness. Hosko's race has gone from bad to worse in that interaction. 5 minutes left in the race as well as we come to the end. And that had to happen. Let's see what it looked like from Hosco's perspective when it comes to that bit of contact. So they're battling closely. Going through turn 6. Oh my goodness, and there's just not enough space. Fortunately, not major damage to Hosco. And to be fair, not major damage to the car ahead as well. But Priatko's just come into the pits. Why has that happened? Why is Priatko into the pits? Is there damage to his car? Is that it? Am I missing something? I don't know what I'm seeing. Priatko, the scene of great confusion at Monza today. Meanwhile, Pujari and Worth having a little battle in P7 and P8. The Porsche behind, barely visible. Only 0.2 seconds separating these two, Porsche and the BMW. Fox and Manchip just swapped positions. Nothing too significant about that. They are in different categories. So ultimately it's not too much of a biggie, but Rucroft and Matthews seem to be having a fight down in P22 for class position. Still half a second between the Porsche and the BMW now, coming into turn 1, and only 3 minutes left in the race. Oh, and that Porsche is very close to the rear of the BMW ahead. Only 3/10 separate them. There's the Aston Martin Will Smith coming out wide to allow them through. This is going to be a look into the chicane from the Porsche. Not quite. He keeps it held back. Unfortunately, I just thought of this, we didn't see too much carnage in lap 1, but we have seen carnage over the whole course of the race. Looks like Hosco and McElwain are still fighting. This is Pujari's chance to get past, down into turn 6. As long as they don't take each other out, that's all fine, but we don't want a similar incident as we saw between Hosco and McElwain earlier. Speaking of them, McElwain and Hosco are really close. Hosco now 0.4, 0.5 seconds. Oh my goodness, and McElwain's just dropped. They've just swapped positions. Let's see what has happened there. So this is McElwain ahead. Oh, and he just outbrakes himself with the chicane. And Hosco was just putting on the pressure for maybe about 15 minutes now. And finally, managed to get past and take P14. So that's what happened further down the grid, but now we're still following Pujari and Worth fighting. Lavagnos is losing time. Lavagnos is rapidly losing time. I'm not sure what's happened there, car 13, but meanwhile this is now Pujari, the Porsche making a move on the BMW down the inside into turn 1. Side by side. And it's a long wait, and that is Pujari up into P7. And Lavagnos is dropping rapidly. Where has he gone? P13. And he is on the side of the road in the barriers.
Right, man.
What has happened? Lavagnos, car 13, we unfortunately have no idea what's happened, but Lavagnos seems to be out of this race as we come into the final lap now. Mishk leading the Pro class, Jordan leading the Pro-Am class, and Worth leading the Am class. Looks like Worth has just managed to get back ahead of Pujari. So these two drivers are still battling. So this then is our AM class leader, Jordan in the Mustang, leading a very quiet race, leading the Pro-Am class. And then the Pro class is going to be Mishka driving the BMW, and he's had a very quiet race as well. And you can see on the right hand side of your screen that slow moving yellow dot on the right hand side of the track, car 13. That is going to be Lavagno's car 9. Who is that? Car 9 is Mouchard once again. Mouchard is struggling as well. Mouchard is also parked on the side of the track. Car 17 going slowly. Oh my goodness, the last couple of laps of the race proving to be the deadliest. That's still Hosko and Davey swapping position. Oh my goodness, oh dear. Things have gone terribly wrong for a lot of our drivers here at the end of the race today. But ultimately, it's Mishka who leads a quiet race and takes his first win of the season. The checkered flag falls at Monza as Mishka wins round 3 of the Season 3 Championship. Not far behind is Jordan, who takes another win for this season. The checkered flag waves a second time for the Mustang, who wins round 3 for the Pro-Am class. And a while further back, it's going to be Ruben Worth, who has a huge gap between P1 and P2 in the AM class. As long as he can just bring the car home safely, then it's all good. We are seeing the meatball flag being flown, but that is going to be irrelevant now as they come through the final section of the track. Ruben Worth just trying to bring it home, and he's already excited coming into the Parabolica. And the checkered flag falls a final time for the BMW of Worth, who wins round 3 of the HSR Motorsport GT3 Season 3 Championship. Our AM class winner, and what a race it has been today. I cannot believe how much we saw today, both good and bad, but primarily bad because we looked at most of the replays, unfortunately. But wow, that was nuts. That was very interesting to watch. And of course, from the broadcasting side of things, it was also very chaotic with all the issues, and I do apologize for all of that, and hopefully next week it will be better. Now, of course, next week will be round 4. I don't know where I got 9 from. Next week will be round 4 of the championship. However, I unfortunately am unable to cover that, as well as round 5. So you guys will likely be watching the stream from one of our drivers' perspective. So do still join for that. It will be the usual time, 7 p.m. 7 p.m. BST, British Standard Time, British Summer Time. You can tell where my brain is at the moment. 7 p.m. British Summer Time for round 4 next Friday, and round 5 as well. I won't be able to cover that as well, but I'll hopefully be back for round 6, then off for round 7, and then back for the finale of the season. But until round 6 then, I bid you farewell and have a good night.